Hello and welcome to the audio review of The Crossed by Avatar Press, written by Garth Ennis. This is an audio only review, so you can check your email or play WoW while listening to it. I'd like to state right now that this review is my opinion and mine alone, and that it does not weigh in on anyone else that works at the Hairy Tarantula West or is associated with any other Hairy Tarantulas in general. To be honest, at times it can be reviewed as a giant mess because there's a lot of problems, and I hate it for its problems, though the problems don't actually deal with the storytelling aspects or the scripting or anything like that. I'll get into those later. For a reminder of people who may not remember who Garth Ennis is, he is most famous for Preacher, but he's also very popular for a run he's done on Punisher. Now, there's two camps for Garth Ennis usually. There are people who honestly just roll their eyes when his name is mentioned because they see him as some sort of over the top, uh, like Saw. It's like it's just over the top and needlessly violent for the sake of being so, and there's a lot of swearing for the sake of swearing. And then there are people who, for the most part, like the stories he's trying to portray, even though they will admit he crosses the line. In Crossed, it's not even like you cross the line into bad taste. You cross past that line at one point, which is really unfortunate. Um, there are two groups of people in The Crossed. The first is the heroes, which is a ragtag group of survivors attempting to basically survive. The other are the Crossed. Now, the Crossed are a bunch of people who, for whatever reason, I mean, there's theories, but it's never really described how it all started, end up becoming psychotic and doing the most deplorable things ever for the sake of doing the most deplorable things ever. And the way you can tell they're crossed, and the reason why they're called crossed, is because when the condition takes hold, it burns a cross into your face. Yeah, well, there's that. Anyhow, a couple things about the crossed. Um, I know that they're very primitive, but I don't know why they actually had to sit down and insist that their language be grunts, moans, laughters, and various swear words, racial terms, and school ground insults strung together. Especially seeing that this book focused on a group of organized cross who are above and beyond the standard primals. It just doesn't make sense to me, per se. But there it is. A second problem is I understand they're primal and evil and it's wrong. It's every evil, wrong thing that men and women ever wanted to do for the sake of doing it, and they're actually doing it. But was there a necessity for them to go through and sexually violate every victim? I mean like every victim, just 'cause? And those that couldn't do it relieved themselves sexually in the background of the scenes, again, just 'cause. Uh, See, I understand the concept of show don't tell, and what show don't tell says it's a concept for when you're storytelling. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to let us know what is happening by showing us an actual scene as opposed to having someone recant it. But there comes a point where if you do too much show and not enough telling, you could throw your reader off. And in one of those scenes, there's a point where the Cross catch up to this family, and the guys think Salt will save them. And, well, sorry for the spoiler alert, but needless to say, it doesn't work. And there's a big, huge page where they're being sexually violated while their daughter is being quartered over top of them. Now, sure, that makes them seem evil, but it's rather derogatory. And even at that point, a better tool would have been they get grabbed, and then you see one of the cross or a couple of the cross laughing while you hear screams, and you can let our mind fill in the blank. I mean, that would be a better engine to show how evil they are, because, well, not everyone would go to the same place, and now you just kind of made it look cheap and pornographic in the nature. it's hard to describe really without seeing it. There's a lot of people just roll their eyes at it, which really hurts the book because I mean it is a good story in the end, despite a few plot holes. Also, another thing that comes up for necessity's sake is they don't know this is a virus or not, but there comes a point where everyone sexually relieves themselves into a bowl full of bullets. Now, if this was a virus, which they're kind of playing at, even though it doesn't work like a virus and it takes like 2 seconds to take a hold and whatever, um, but that were they shoot a guy and the bullet passes through him and then he becomes crossed. I don't know if that was actually like had a point or if that was just that needless nonsense they used to pad the book and make it shocking or edgy. Also, can we have a reason outside of just cuz? I mean, like I can't even say the main crossed leader's name in this review because children may be listening. But if you're gonna have him go through, evolve, adapt, round people up, train people, make new crossed, the whole 9 yards, can we have a reason? Their official reason is just cuz. Because why not? I mean, why not go against your nature and have other people go against their nature other than for the sake of doing it? That's one of the big problems is when it comes to dealing with the crossed, there's some plot holes and inconsistencies, and it's just rather annoying. Great example of that, again, small spoiler alert, is there's a cop who has a crossed in the back of his police car. 4 days, and he drives around with this thing 4 days, and it talks to him all the time, and laughs at him, and freaks him out all the time. And then when the group of protagonists show up, it spits on him randomly, and he automatically becomes crossed, and it's never done that in the days beforehand, though it tried to bite him, and he's given it water and food. Oh dear. Anyways, whatever, right? The biggest question I have for this book is if I could ask Garth Ennis, what was the point behind Brett? What purpose did he serve? I mean, he had no point. He really did nothing. He just kind of was there to be a jerk, so they could have a jerk magnet, so that they could say, hey, look, we have a jerk. There's a couple other scenes involving the remains of a class of kindergarten students and the friendly old man, which were really mind blowing in the way they were handled, and they were really dark at points. But I mean, there was a purpose and a reason, and it showed stuff. Brett is just around to be a jerk. And then when he's tired of being a jerk, or they don't need him to be a jerk anymore, even though being a jerk doesn't accomplish anything or push anything forward, he's removed. So, I don't know. I found that really annoying, especially seeing that he took up 20% of the book and did nothing. The art is really, really good. It's desolate, and, the anatomy's good, and skeletons are proper, and they actually allow you to have a proper sense of time passing. But, just devil's in the details, okay? And the art is one of the places where they end up having to. Well, they don't have to. They choose to cross over into a more inappropriate concept. Like they have one character who has a underwear made out of a human face, which coincidentally doesn't properly support or hold all that it should. Now, I don't see why this is necessary. I mean, you do have people in the background, like hung from light posts, and you did a really good job in the art showing people being killed without it being, well, being very brutal, not being very gruesome and pointless. And then you have this guy running around with his testicles hanging out of his like human underwear. I don't get it. It seemed kind of needless. The biggest problem with the Crossed, hands down, is in order to like sell the book, they filled it in the beginning full of obscene images. like naked men and women being dragged by the hair and torn up, and that was a big selling theme. Well, that doesn't always work, especially when you're trying to tell a story about, people surviving. Especially when you go through all the details to actually sit down and explain, why all the nuclear weapons haven't blown up, or, why only like one power station blew up. You spend all that time going through all those details and intelligently go through and explain all this. I like the random pornographic gore is just not necessary and detracts from the book, which brings me to the biggest problem I have with The Cross, and it's one of the problems that holds it back as a book is the covers. The covers are just obscenely ridiculous. They're always super gory, involving children and like old ladies and pets, but mainly involves children. Children killing people or people eating children or things like that. One at the beginning there are a few parodies of like famous American covers or famous American scenes, but afterwards it just got ridiculous. And then you insist on instead of pushing the book forward, pausing for a month to release all sorts of even more stupidly gory, disgusting covers. You're just going to chase people away. I mean, for the longest time, I just condemned the crossed as what they referred to as gore porn because honestly, every cover was just like men eating babies or things like that. And what was the point? I mean, if this was the best you could sit there and do, um, really, that's supposed to be the selling point for me. And they never tell you about what was happening. It was, what happens when law is no more and government's no more and civilization crumbles in the day and people are doing the darkest deeds possible. What happens when there is only the crossed? Does that sound appealing to you if you've watched a couple children being cooked in a stove? Like, does that sound like a book you want to pick up? Honestly? Well, anyways. I sat down because it sold. People buy it. People want it for some reason. So I actually went down from cover to cover and read it. And I have to say, all in all, once they ditched their selling point, once they got past the ridiculous sexual violence, and there is a point where they leave that behind about a third of the way through the book becomes much more interesting, despite Brett being there for no reason and having a lot of stuff happen around him, which means nothing. Anyways, whatever. So I guess I have to look back at this and say, would I recommend this book? Honestly, if you're looking for scripting, if you're a person who wants to study scripting, the book is fairly decent. It's nothing truly revolutionary. It's more along the lines of your standard, the world has ended, and now we have to survive and try and keep track of our humanity and what does it mean to be human book, but they do it well and kind of interesting. And kind of at times take you to places you wouldn't normally be taken to. On the other hand, the visceral, pointless violence and sexual violence is a huge deterrent. So I don't know. I don't know if you can handle it. You can come and take a look at it if you want. It will be bagged at our location because I don't want children flipping through it. But you can look at the art style on the front and determine for yourself if you're willing to put up with random sexual violence towards children and adults, for the sake of leaving that behind and actually getting to the point where you have a decently scripted, fairly straightforward story. All in all, if I was to give it a number out of 10, I would have honestly, without the type of marketing campaign they did, without their covers, I would have given the book about a 9. But because of the fact that they had to have their covers be relevant, so they stuck in that needless stuff, I'd knock it down to a 6 out of 10. Anyhow, until next time, this is Tanis, signing off.